Hey, soul survivors, we're going to talk a little bit about ADHD, why it's often overlooked, because there's different types of neurodivergence, also different mental illnesses, and it's important to understand either ourselves or the people that we're dealing with in our lives. So there's three main types of ADHD. They've recently combined ADD and ADHD. So not everybody presents as hyperactive. So you do have your inattentive type. Now, these people, they have trouble focusing on certain tasks, especially ones that aren't very interesting. They can be easily distracted, jump from one thing to another. They like to forget things, not on purpose, but they do forget things like where they put their phone or their homework, different things that they had to do. So they seem a little bit scattered. They can make careless mistakes, whether it's at work or at school. And then the second type is the hyperactive and impulsive type. They're always kind of moving and fidgeting. They talk a lot. Sometimes they interrupt people or they speak out of turn. And that's why a lot of times they get confused as narcissists. So they can act without thinking. They can grab things or blurt out answers. Difficulty sitting still, especially when being quiet is expected. And then you have your combined type. This is a mix of both the inattentive and hyperactive impulsive symptoms. And that's the type that most people with ADHD have. So, what causes it? They're not exactly completely sure, but they think it has a combination of genetic, which are inherited factors, also environmental influences. And this can mean that it often runs in families, and things like premature birth or exposure to toxins can increase the risk. So it's diagnosed. It's not just a simple blood test. A healthcare professional needs to assess symptoms by talking to the person, their family, sometimes teachers, and they'll compare these symptoms with the criteria that's in the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And we're currently in the fifth edition. So there are ways to treat it. There's no cure for it, but you can use medication, helps them focus, stay on task, also reduce that hyperactivity. Therapy, behavioral therapy can help people that have ADHD develop skills to manage these symptoms. And it's also helpful in learning how to cope with the emotional aspects of ADHD because it can cause frustration, low self-esteem, feeling like they don't fit in or they're just so different. And even lifestyle changes. A healthy diet, regular exercise, good sleep is important. Strong routines can really help with ADHD symptoms. So it's good to set a regular time for homework, use planners, or just get yourself on a schedule. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions that go along with ADHD. And, some people think it's not a real condition, just an excuse for bad behavior, or that it's caused by eating too much sugar. Now, these can kind of exacerbate when you eat too much sugar, you can get a little hyper, but it's not the cause of ADHD. It's not what's really going on. It's a real medical condition. And people with ADHD often work harder than others to manage these symptoms, and they can mask as well. So, we want to let people live their authentic lives, but also kind of fit in with society. So many people, they have a very successful life. If they have ADHD, they might think differently, but they can, there can be advantages in creative fields or in jobs that require quick thinking, lots of energy, kind of keeps their self in motion. So people with ADHD often think and process information differently compared to people who don't have the condition. So some major differences. Divergent thinking, strengths. People with ADHD often excel in divergent thinking, which is the ability to come up with multiple solutions or ideas for a single problem. And it's associated with creativity, innovation, but they have challenges. They might generate many ideas, struggle to organize or prioritize them. They can also go into like that paralysis where they're overwhelmed and they don't know what to do. There's so much going on in their mind that it overpowers them. They can hyper focus. So they're not always scattered. Sometimes they are hyper focused. And that's the ability to intensely focus on a task that's interesting and stimulating to them. And during these periods, these people with ADHD, they can work for hours without distraction, often producing high quality work. But this intense focus can sometimes make it difficult to shift the attention to other tasks, especially if they're less engaging or interesting. Now, impulsivity and thought, they have a strength where they often think quickly, can make snap decisions, can be beneficial in certain situations that require quick judgment and creativity. But it's also a challenge because it can lead to difficulties with planning or considering long-term consequences of their decisions. And this can result in actions that seem rushed or poorly thought out. And when it comes to sensitivity to stimulation, they have a strength. They're highly sensitive to their environment and can make them more aware of details that other people might overlook. And this heightened awareness can be useful in fields that require attention to detail. But on the flip side, this sensitivity can lead to sensory overload, often difficulty filtering out distractions, making it hard to focus in noisy or chaotic environments. They have non-linear thinking. So their brains often work kind of out of the box. They might jump from one idea to another, making connections that aren't immediately obvious. It makes sense to them. So this can lead to creative problem solving, unique perspectives, but this type of non-linear approach can sometimes make it difficult to follow step-by-step processes, which can become a problem in situations that require logical, sequential approach. Also, difficulty with executive functioning. Their brains are actually a little bit different if you look at the different brain scans. So their executive functions are the mental skills that help us manage time, plan, organize. And people that have ADHD can struggle with these skills, and it leads to difficulties starting things, keeping on track, completing projects. And they might know what needs to be done, but have trouble breaking it down into manageable steps. And they do have strengths. Despite the challenges, they often excel in situations that require adaptability, quick thinking, multitasking, but they do have an emotional intensity. So they can experience emotions with extreme intensity, but it can make them passionate and deeply committed to causes or activities that they care about. This intensity can drive them to achieve great things, but they do have a challenge that this same intensity can lead to difficulties in managing emotions. They do feel extreme emotion, and it can make them more susceptible to stress, frustration, mood swings. And they have a preference for novelty, natural curiosity, strong desire for new experiences, and they start being led down a path that explores wide ranges of interests and hobbies. It can also have a downside, though. It can make them hard to stick to a repetitive or routine task, as they might quickly lose interest and move on to something more exciting. So it can cause frustrations within the home or workplace where they start something, but then they skip on to the next thing. They have a lot of unfinished tasks or hobbies. And there is some research that believe that due to a combination of several factors, there are some contributing things that can cause ADHD. Family history, it can tend to run in families, and that kind of suggests a strong genetic component. If a parent has ADHD, their child is more likely to develop it as well. There is research that shows genes that are associated with the neurotransmitters dopamine and norepinephrine can affect attention and impulse control. It could possibly play a role. Multiple genes can be involved. It's not necessarily just one single gene, but rather a combination, and it can increase the risk. So within their brain structure and function, they have studies that use these brain imaging and found that certain areas of the brain may be smaller or less active in people with ADHD, such as in the prefrontal cortex. And that's involved in the executive functions like decision making, impulse control, and attention. You'll see it on the brain scans where it's not quite as plump and filled in. Neurotransmitter imbalance are chemicals that transmit these signals in the brain. So people that have ADHD, they can have imbalances in these key neurotransmitters, particularly dopamine and norepinephrine, which are crucial for attention, focus, and the regulation of impulses. And there could be some prenatal factors that happen during pregnancy. So if smoking or alcohol use, try not to do that, or at least limit it, because maternal smoking or alcohol consumption during pregnancy is linked to a higher risk of ADHD in children. Also, exposures to different types of toxins, such as lead, during pregnancy or early childhood can affect brain development. That's why if you're buying a house, it's good to know, is there lead paint in the house? And there are certain ways to take care of that. Comment below. I'll reply to you if you're curious about that. But also premature birth or having a low birth rate, they feel may be a factor in this. Also brain injury, early brain injury. Some cases have been linked to trauma or a traumatic brain injury, especially injuries that affect the frontal lobe of the brain, and that's that area that controls the decision making and impulse control, but it's not commonly a root cause, and it's only for a small amount of ADHD cases. When you have a TBI, traumatic brain injury, it can affect mood, a lot of different things. So also diet and nutrition, food additives and sugar. There's this ongoing debate about the role of diet, but we all know the healthier you eat, the better you are. Anyways, psychosocial factors, the family environment, while it's not a cause, the environment in which a child grows up can influence the severity of ADHD symptoms, such as high levels of stress, lack of structure, inconsistent discipline can exacerbate these symptoms. Or early childhood experiences, trauma, abuse, extreme disruptions in a child's early developmental years can lead to behaviors that either mimic or exacerbate ADHD. So it's not necessarily a cause of the disorder, but it can cause the responses to it to be amplified. So there's complex interaction. ADHD is likely a cause of genetic, environmental, neurological factors. Each person is different, but once we get to know our people or ourselves, we can handle it as best that we can. And there are coping mechanisms, and also to make the person feel not so alone and not so different. We all want to fit in. We also want to be different. So there's a good balance between that. Please like and subscribe. Comment below if you'd like to know more about how lead paint affects people and their mental health. And one-on-ones are available. Topic requests are always welcome. And I'll see you in the next video.